Hi. Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How's everyone doing? How was your weekend? How's the weather where you're at? I feel like I'm asking how the weather is. You can tell it's winter here in New York City because whenever it's winter, I feel like all New Yorkers talk about is the weather. I've probably shared this on a live stream before. I moved here, going on my I've been here 8.5 years, which almost makes me an official New Yorker, and I moved here from California. And I lived in Florida before that. And I don't think I ever talked about the weather living in California. But now that I live in New York, it's like I'm a typical New Yorker where every conversation is about the weather. I think it's a way we connect. We got through the winter together. So I have to apologize to besties and bosses because every week I think I'm talking about the weather. So tell me how the weather is where you're at. I'm being a typical New Yorker that way. I can't help myself. That's what happens when it's cold. But what we're actually going to talk about today is so much more fun. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is money and our mindset around money. And we're going to talk about specifically 2 mindset shifts you can make to bring in more clients and cash. Before we dive in, a couple announcements before I forget. First and foremost, we have this month's free masterclass and training at the end of the month, Words That Sell. So we're going to be chatting about the words you use in your marketing and the words you talk about to yourself and how you can use them to sell more. And we'll be workshopping that. I believe it's kimargetsinger.com/words-that-sell. I'll drop a link for that. It'll be at the end of the month. And we have a really fun bonus with actually great words. It's like a cheat sheet you can use with your copy. So sign up if you want the bonus for that. I dropped a link earlier today and this weekend. It is the anniversary of my father's passing, and many of you in the group know that. My dad was a really prolific race car driving coach, and we created scholarship sessions 2 years ago in his honor. So this week in his honor, to honor my dad and how incredible he was, I'm giving away a couple free 30-minute coaching sessions. So I'll make sure we drop a link for that here as well. We'll post again in the group probably one or two more times with that. They are limited because I am full obviously with clients, but it is a way that I get to honor my dad and support some of you and connect with some of you, which is my favorite thing to do. So I will just make sure, just take a look for that and just kind of first come, first serve on those. There's no crazy application process. It's a single short session, but we can cover a lot in that time. Are those all the announcements? I think those are all the announcements. So let's dive in today to money talk and to talk about some of these mindset shifts. So I wanted to bring these particularly today because I've been noticing them with my clients a lot and quite a lot on client calls. And one of the things I shared, if you get my emails or if you read the blurb about this, I think the 2 we're going to dive into today, I think are really sneaky because I think on the surface, they almost seem like they're supportive and that they're things we're doing really in support of our business and our goals and making money. And I think they're the kind of mindsets that are just kind of insidious and sneaky under the surface, the way they can actually really sabotage our ability to bring in money, and subconsciously can almost be like this big F you sign saying don't come in. So I want to unpack those particularly so that you can have a little more awareness around this. This isn't to make anyone wrong, right? This is what coaching is all about, right? We get to have space so we can just have some awareness around where some of our thoughts might not be serving us, and some of the ways it's really hard. I always say it's hard to see the spinach in your own teeth. It's hard to notice these things sometimes until we just shine the light on it, so you can have some awareness around it, so we can understand where some of these thought patterns come from. And then just so you can have some resources, tools we'll talk through to some ways to shift some of these thought patterns. So you're staying out of your own ways, you're able to manifest, create more money in your business. A quick preface before we dive into this, it feels important. I've probably shared this before, but I'm really big when we talk about mindset around money, around just having kind of the disclaimer here. Super normal. We all get to remember, we're all humans here. This stuff comes up for everyone. I have to unpack this myself. So just to normalize all of that, because I'm not coaching you one-on-one. We're doing this as a group. I don't want anyone hearing stuff and then making yourself wrong. That feels first important there. And the other thing, when I talk about money, I really like to think through the lens that we're looking at your mindset, period, full stop. And money is a lens that we can notice some of our thought patterns and mindset patterns around, as opposed to thinking we have a money mindset, a relation mindset, a business mindset. It's really our mindset overall. How we do one thing, how we think about one thing, it tends to translate to other places. And I think the reason that's really helpful is it simplifies everything. So if we know money just happens to be something you and I as business owners tend to care about, most people care about money to some degree because it's, something that we use in this world to help get the things we want and desire. And so I think it can be a very useful lens to notice what's coming up with money. But I say that because this way, whatever you identify today, whatever we're uncovering today, if you're like, oh, that's one of the blocks I have, that's one of the blocks, so that's one of the patterns I have, what's really useful here is instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, now there's another thing I have to do, what you can think about is, oh, this is probably a pattern that shows up elsewhere as well. If I can address it here with my money, yay, win, bonus, it's gonna make it easier in business for me to make money, but also it's probably gonna help shift things elsewhere. Similarly, like with my clients all the time, so often we're on calls and we're not even talking about their business, we're talking about their marriage or their kids or their relationship with their clients, something else going on, because whatever is going on there is still impacting how they're showing up in business in their business. So hopefully that makes sense, but I just wanna kind of give that context here. Always when we're talking about mindset, but I think for some reason money mindset always feels like it's almost its own entity instead of still mindset, and then we just get to see how do we address this across the board. Hope that makes sense. I was gonna ask y'all if you want to guess what these things are, but that's not fair because I said this even in the forum, there's so many things that can come up for us around money, and these are the two that just have felt really prevalent. I also have to be very transparent with y'all, and you'll have to let me know now or on the replay if this is true. I'm having one of those deja vu moments where I'm about to share something like, did we talk about this last week on our live stream? Anyone here who's a business owner who shares a lot of content, at a certain point you're like, did I talk about that already? Most likely because this has come up so much on client calls, or maybe I record our podcast in advance. Maybe there's something on the podcast. I don't think we actually talked about this last week, but I'm having that moment. So you have to tell me, Kim, we totally talked about this last week, and then we'll just pivot. But the first thing, there's two here we're going to dive into today. Do you like how I called myself out? We're going to unpack them a little bit, and we'll kind of workshop a little bit how you can self-coach through them. So the first thing I find that is, I think one of the biggest blockers for money, and just that stops growth altogether and blocks booking, kind of blocks all progress, full stop, everywhere, is worrying. That sounds really simple, but worrying. And it's really interesting what worrying does, where it comes from. We'll talk about that a little bit. But I think worrying is one of those funny things that so many of us don't realize we have a bit of an addiction to. I think many of us are addicted to drama patterns overall because of how it can stimulate us, or because it's what we've learned or witnessed growing up. And I think worrying in particular is something many people are addicted to, because I think there is an immediate payoff and gain we get when we worry. Now, I know that doesn't sound like, I know anyone watching are probably like, worrying feels like shit. Why would that, like, how could I get a payoff from that? But if we think about it, when we're worrying about something, it feels like we're doing something. And I think for many people, it's something often we've learned, we've absorbed, we've learned from either well-meant parents or society or mentors or peers as something that people do. And so we see like, oh, this is a thing. Or we've learned when people worry, right, we commiserate, we connect. I think there's a lot of that that can happen. Or when we worry, we feel like I'm really problem solving. I'm like being really great and thinking ahead, and like I'm doing something here. I think if we think about worrying a little bit, we can see that we start to unpack it. Coach, we talk about like, what's the secondary gain? What are you getting from that behavior? And that's not like, what are you getting from that behavior to make anyone wrong, but just noticing how a lot of times we choose subconsciously thought patterns, behaviors, because on some level they serve us, on some level they help us meet a need, on some level it feels good to us, even if it's like super, 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 super subconsciously. And I think worrying is one of those things that sometimes consciously can feel really good, right? It can almost feel like we're hitting that weird self-soothing button where it's like, it weirdly feels so good to worry. And I'm like what's it called? Like a recovering perfectionist. I'm also a recovering worrier, because man, I can let myself worry about things real well. I think so many of us can. So if this is you, feel free to raise your hand and say, hey, like that's me sometimes. I am you, I feel you, I get you. It's a super normal thing. But I think what's really helpful is starting to see, oh, wait a second, do I have a little bit of an addiction to worrying? And does it maybe feel good on a subconscious, on like a strange level? If anyone knows Carolyn Elliott's work, Existential Kink, it's a great book to check out. She talks about how sometimes we can get off on these secondary gains, but is there something with worrying that maybe feels really good? Because what I want to shift to here is, we can see like this is a pretty normal thing that many of us do. Again, like I think this is something that I don't know if men do this as much as women, and I don't want to generalize there, but I think this is even something, a way women have learned to connect, right? I'm just going to worry, I'm just going to complain, and it's almost like this is how we commiserate with one another. So again, just noticing how this is a normal thing. This isn't making anyone wrong. I think this is something many people do. But what happens when we want to make money in business and we want to book clients in business, and our go-to addiction, our go-to mechanism, our go-to self-soothing tool is worrying? We have to think about what this is actually doing and how this is actually serving your ability to bring in money. When we worry about something, what we're really doing, I love how James Wedmore, he has a podcast. What is the name of his podcast? He's all about mindset and manifesting and inside out things. I cannot think of the name of his podcast to save my life right now. But he talks a lot about how worrying is really, it's like making a plan for the future. Right? When we're worrying, what we're really doing is we're spending a lot of time focusing on things that haven't happened yet. And if we think about what manifesting is, what mindset, like why mindset's so important in business, and we think about what our brain does when we're creating anything, right? We have a thought first, that thought, and with that thought, there's a feeling attached to it. Those thoughts and feelings do a couple of things. One, they tell a part of your brain, geek out mode here, but called the reticular activating system, what to notice and pay attention to, and what to filter for in your periphery. This is a self-protection thing. We couldn't possibly pay attention to all of the stimulus in our world all of the time. So we have this functionality in our brain to help us just notice like what we should pay attention to. This is why you've probably heard the phrase, what you focus on expands. Part of the reason for this is literally what you focus on and tell your brain to. There's a part of your brain that says, hey, we're worrying about, we don't have enough money right now. We're worrying about, I don't have enough clients right now. We're worrying about, I don't have enough money to pay the rent, or my business isn't making enough money, or I'm not making 10K months, whatever that worry is. We're literally programming a part of our brain and saying, hey, filter for, notice and look for, focus on and expand, not making enough money, not having enough clients. And so it's why I love what James Wedmore says when he says worrying is essentially creating a plan for the future. What we're literally doing when we worry is we're inputting our brain. We're telling our brain to connect basically to our filtration system and to notice things that match what we're worrying about. And so in many ways, we are unintentionally manifesting more of the same, or something that hasn't even happened yet. A lot of times I find with clients when they're worrying and they're spinning out around a worry, and again, we can see where we were talking about where this comes from. Super normal, not to make yourself wrong. I think this, again, can be a learned behavior. I think sometimes we get that secondary gain from it. But what they're unintentionally doing is oftentimes they're worried about something that hasn't even happened yet, but they're making it so much more likely it will happen because they're feeding their brain essentially this blueprint, this plan for go make this thing I'm worrying about happening, or go make it happen. It's really hard to worry yourself to epic success and epic money. Let me know if this is resonating, if this is connecting with y'all, and if this is making sense, or if you have any questions around this. I'm always available for that. But we can see the other thing that happens for those of you who believe in energy and believe in manifesting, when we're worrying, what are we doing? We're literally, if we think about manifesting, what do we do when we manifest? We want to focus on something we want, right? We want to be in the energy of what we want to create. We have to kind of be it before we have it. We talk about that so much with manifesting and then go take action to match it. When we are worrying, what we're doing is we're sitting in the energy of, we are literally visualizing and sitting in that energy of all the shit we don't want to have happen. And so we are essentially manifesting or starting to lay down the groundwork for what we want. And then, of course, that's going to impact your actions. And it's also going to impact what you even notice as available to you. Jen says, yes, this is making sense. So glad this is making sense. So I think this is really, really important to notice because, again, most of us are worrying on autopilot. It is like a default switch. I don't think anyone is going around consciously and intentionally saying, I want to be a worry wart. It feels so good to worry. I get a bunch of secondary gains from worrying, and I love to worry, and I love to make a plan for the future of something that hasn't happened yet that's exactly the stuff I don't want, right? I don't think any of us, none of my clients are doing that. None of you are doing that. So I want to bring it here so we can start to notice and start to create awareness around, holy moly, this is something I need to start to put the awareness shift on my brain. Can I start to observe my thoughts? Can I start to notice when maybe I'm feeling insecure, when maybe I'm feeling triggered, maybe when I'm feeling insecure and scarcity, when something's coming up for me around money, how my default might be to flip the worry switch. Can I start to catch that? Can I start to notice that? Can I start to be really disciplined and mindful of watching my thoughts and managing them and starting to see when I'm worrying, this is a place I need to start catching those thoughts and saying, wait a second, this hasn't happened yet. These thoughts haven't happened yet. These are all lies. So one of my favorite things to play with when we're worrying or when we're playing with fears is not like, how do we argue with the thought? How do we like tell the thought it's wrong? I don't know if we talk about this in this group a lot. Arguing with your thoughts is it's just such a losing battle. My coach likes to say you can't argue with crazy. You can't argue with crazy, y'all. I don't know if anyone's ever, I worked in a bar for 10 years, so sometimes I'd have to work with people who like were overserved and super drunk. And you know when someone's super, super drunk and they're like spewing crazy, you can't really argue with them. You can't like try to convince them what they're saying is incorrect. If you do, they just like want to fight for that crazy a little bit more. Your brain when it's worrying, your brain when it's in fear, your brain when it's in scarcity is a little bit like an overserved drunk person, right? It's kind of operating on a little bit of crazy. I'm not calling anyone here crazy, but in terms of like, it's not really operating on the rational switch, and it's really not something that you want to argue with. If you try to fight your worry and argue with your worry, I promise you your worry, it is drunker than your conscious thoughts. It will win all day, every day, right? We love to fight for our limitations, and not because anyone here wants to consciously self-sabotage or because they want to push away money consciously, but because subconsciously, all of our limiting thoughts, all of our worries, all of our fears, all of our drunken so-called thoughts, we have them because they meet a need. They do something for us. So kind of what we were talking about at the beginning here, when we're worrying on a subconscious level, your brain thinks that's doing something for you. It thinks this is something that is serving you. It is like, we need to get that need met. We need to just worry. So you kind of have to treat your worry thoughts a little bit like you might treat a really drunken person, right? Where you're like, I'm not gonna argue with them, right? I'm gonna let them sober up over here. But the last thing I'm gonna do is try to argue with them. And I say that so you can start to see when your worry thoughts are coming up. Can you, and this is like so absurd, but I think sometimes a little absurdity, a little levity can help us with our brains. And can you almost play with this idea of like, my brain is being like a drunken, overserved teenager right now who can't handle their liquor. I'm not gonna fight with crazy. I'm just not gonna listen to this. These are all lies. These are all just lies from my brain. Who is it? Amanda Francis. That's the money mindset girl, right? I think she calls them lies from the devil. These are lies from the devil, right? So can you start to notice that? And instead, I think what a really easy thing to play with is asking yourself, what do you want to focus on instead? And what do you know to be true? I need a kombucha break. I feel like we just talked about kombucha on the podcast, so now I laugh every time I drink it with y'all. We talked all about scobies, and we're talking about money there too, leveraging bits of your scobies. So bringing us back here. So I think what can be, again, so much more helpful instead of wrapping around the worry, notice the worry. See if you can pay attention to your thoughts. See if you can catch where you're worrying, because a lot of us, I think, when we're in that pattern, when there is almost like that self-soothing, it's almost like the easy button. Again, not because you're trying to take the easy way out, not because anyone's doing this consciously, but I think there's such a feeling of like, I am doing something by worrying. I'm like, this feels like problem solving, but really what we're often doing is creating a problem that doesn't exist. So step one, can you just create some awareness, like watch your thoughts like a hawk? Step two, don't argue with crazy, don't argue with the drunken person in your brain. Step three, can you either pattern, interrupt, and shift your thought and give yourself a healthy distraction? I just personally, like, because my brain will like to go there, I just like to remind myself, Kim, you know how much your thoughts impact your reality. The more you worry, the more you're just gonna make this happen. So I just like to actually stop the thoughts and I'll just go do something, like I'll literally go do something else. I'll go play the piano or just do something completely different to take my brain off that track, because our brain is wired to look for problems. Literally your brain is designed. It's like a little scavenger hunter looking for problems all the time, which is why worrying can also feel good. It's like your brain's like, got it, I found that thing. And so sometimes it's just helpful to not even try to do anything, but just input. Let me give my brain a better problem to chew on. Let me give my brain a better thing to worry about. So for me, that might be something like, I'm gonna go play the piano and play a hard song that's really difficult for me. which by the way is a very simple song for most people. I'm just learning the piano, right? But that gives my brain, it gives it the same win, the same hit of I have found the thing to solve. I feel like I'm doing something. Let me put that energy there. My brain still feels like, it's a little bit like anyone who has dogs. You know how dogs sometimes just need a purpose to feel happy. And so sometimes if you can just like throw the bone for it, it can bring it back to you. It feels like it's done something. Or if you, I used to have an Australian Shepherd. If we would put a water pack on its back when we went walking, it made our dog so much happier. Because he had a job. He had like a problem to solve. He had like something to do. Kind of the same thing with your brain. And so like, I think that's one thing you can play with here. And yes, I promise this is related to money, because when we're worrying, right, what we're doing is we're worrying about, I don't have enough money. I'm not making enough money. I'm never going to book a client. This client's going to go away. All the money's going to go away in my business. Input, worry thoughts about money. What we're doing is creating that plan for more of the same. And so we can see how if we can just give your brain a better problem, you can just stop that plan for the future. The other thing that can be really helpful here that I like to challenge clients around quite a lot is, instead of arguing with those thoughts like we were talking about, for some of you, maybe give yourself a better problem. Give your brain a better bone to chew on, so to say. For another place you can play with is just also playing with, what do I need to be, like, what do I know to be true here? What do I want to focus on? Is there actually a problem to solve? If so, go solve the actual problem. But you'll find when there's actually a problem to solve, you don't worry, right? You get into action and solve the thing. We only tend to worry when there's not actually something that can be done in the moment. And I think that's actually, like, I'm a little like all over the place with this today, but I think that's a really helpful thing to remember. Is there something I can do in this moment? Great. Go do the thing. You're not worrying then. You're problem solving. You're being a business owner. That's not sabotaging money. That is being a really great business owner, a really great steward with your money. If not, I'm worrying. Worrying literally doesn't solve anything for my money. Worrying only pushes money away. That's when you either get to find a better problem to go play with, or just ask yourself, what do you want to focus on instead? Do you want to create more of the same? So you can give your brain a different thought to focus on. Because again, what we focus on really does expand. And that's not just, I mean, y'all know me. I'm so on the woo side and so on the energy side, and I absolutely believe thoughts create things and energy creates things, and we constantly get mirrored back to us in business, what we're thinking and what we're energetically putting out. I was literally having a conversation this morning with a client about this, and we were talking about how what we energetically put out, it's really fascinating. It doesn't always come back from the place we're putting it into. But what we energetically put out, what we think through, and then when we take action around, it always reverberates back to us. And I think that's where, from a manifesting standpoint, that can really impact your money. And also just from a really practical brain science point, right? What you focus on is telling your brain what to expand on. So if you're worrying about paying the bills, if you're worrying about making enough money, and you're thinking, if I just worry about this enough, that's me being really responsible because I need to pay attention to this, I really want to invite you to think again that this is not actually problem solving. If there is something you can do in the moment, it is. Otherwise, all you're doing is creating more of the same. Instead, what do you want to focus your energy on? What do you want to create? Can you shift your energy and focus there? Because that's going to be the mindset shift that puts you into the energy, that puts you into the more proactive, problem-solving part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, but that also puts you in the, if we were talking about earlier, in terms of that reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters things in opportunities and what you notice. Energetically, right, when you shift that focus, you're going to bring in more that's a match, that's a mirror or an energetic match for what you're thinking and feeling. But you're also going to tell your brain, literally, notice, pay attention to opportunities that match this thing I'm shifting my focus to. That shift, maybe it's booking a new client instead of I can't book a client, or I'm never going to book another client. Or maybe it's focusing on that next income month you want to make instead of all the ways you're worrying about money and how you'll never be able to pay the bills, and how, you know, we can see how we can take the same thing and shift the focus to what you want to focus on instead. When you're programming your brain with those thoughts and you shift your brain to that train track, suddenly you can notice things like, oh, look at that person in the Facebook group that I want to message and reach out to and invite, you know, onto a consultation call, that you would never notice before because your brain was just literally not programmed to notice that, along with kind of the woo energy side of things. Okay, let me know if you have questions, because I know I went a little all over the place there. I'm just seeing here. This was the other thing I was going to offer you here. The other thing with worrying, and then we'll switch to the other one, that I think is helpful. I do this with clients. Sometimes I put them on a worry diet. I don't know if you've ever heard people do this with complaining, where it's like putting yourself on a complaining diet and notice how much you complain and see if you can not complain for a day. It's like we are so addicted as humans to complaining. Worrying is very similar. And I say this, and I'll often put clients on a worrying diet to see, can they just go a day without worrying? Not because it's bad if they worry, like this is a pattern, this is human, but to notice how like just ingrained and how this is just like so a habit and a pattern. I think we're so addicted sometimes. I think, yes, sometimes it's because it feels good and it feels like we're doing something or we're getting that secondary gain. But I also think for a lot of people, worrying is just sort of that like reflex thing because they learned it growing up, or because they witnessed other people doing it, or because it makes them feel safe, because in the past maybe the brain has made this weird connection that like, well, I'm not dead yet, so therefore all my worrying must work. Fill in all the reasons we might have this as a knee-jerk reaction, but I think so many of us don't even realize this is just sort of like the autopilot, like what the brain is kind of doing all day long. And so if something fun to play with, bring some levity to this. This is a fun thing, not a way to make yourself wrong, but try putting yourself on a worry diet or in a worry detox and see if you could simply not worry for a whole day. And notice, I challenge anyone, see if you can do that in your first day. And then if you don't, it's not to make you wrong. It's not to beat yourself up. It's not to be like, oh my gosh, I failed the worry diet. This is not like some horrible crash diet. I don't know. I don't even know if people sell horrible crash diets anymore. I feel like that doesn't exist anymore, but I'm sure it does. That's not what we're talking about here. This is more just to create some awareness and to see, wow, I could like 24 hours and let me notice how many times my brain wanted to do this, because then you also see all the opportunities to shift. And so if you want to create more money in your business, if you want to create more clients in your business, you're suddenly seeing all the opportunities mindset-wise to be able to shift that's going to allow for more of that to come in. And I think this is so helpful because I think sometimes when we talk about mindset with money and mindset with booking clients, we think it has to simply be like, I don't know, we're just like chanting affirmations all the time where it's like, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire. And look, I say those affirmations as well. Affirmations do work. I'm not hating on affirmations, but sometimes we are putting glitter on poo and we are like forgetting the things underneath. And I think worrying can be one of those things underneath where it's so insidious and slippery and almost benign because it's not, I don't know, it's not like I don't believe I can be successful in my business. It's not like a mindset that feels like we can catch it in the same way as a limiting belief. It just kind of like slithers underneath. And I think so often we think it's true, which is why, again, I want you to play with these are all lies. Your worries are all lies. They haven't happened yet. If it's true, you would be able to solve it in the moment and do something. So try that. Try the worry diet. And see that is some of the best mindset work you can do. If you're a worrier, if you're addicted to worrying, welcome to being like many, many humans. And this has been such a great opportunity because if you can even start to shift this a few percentages, right? Even just a little bit and start to shift the worrying, to start to create that awareness, think of how much capacity that opens up in your mind now to be available for bringing in more clients, noticing more clients, bringing in more money, making more money, receiving more money, noticing those opportunities, being in that energy of. Jen says, love this, the worry diet. Yes, the worry diet. It sounds so silly. It sounds like I'm almost like telling you to worry more, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe we should say the worry detox. But yes, the worry diet. So play with that. And everyone, I would love to know if you do play with this. Let me know how it goes. Share with us in the Facebook group. Share with us here. I think this is also so helpful to normalize and start having conversations around, because the more we normalize it and the more we notice it, right, the easier it is to spot. And the like awareness is 90% of all, maybe 80%, I don't know. It's a very large percentage of all mindset things. It's really hard for us to shift a mindset pattern and to shift something if we're not aware it's even happening. So if you can create that awareness, that's like so much of the game. You don't even have to do anything else with it. If you just do that, that's going to be a big shift. And I promise this is directly connected to your money, because if you're lying in bed at night worrying about your money, worrying about clients, it's kind of like you're praying to whoever you believe in to give you exactly what you're worrying. So you can just see if you start to catch that, stop that, shift that. Worry about all the money you're going to make and what you're going to do with it instead. If you can't let go of the worrying, play with that instead. Like, let me worry about what it would be like to make so much money, I don't know what to do with it. Let me worry about what it would feel like to sit in overflow. Let me worry about what it would feel like to be overbooked, to have so many clients. Like, if you're gonna be stuck worrying and you can't like get out of it, play with worrying about what you want instead. Okay, so the other mindset shift I wanted to bring here, and I want to call it mindset shift because I don't love the word blocks. We need one more kombucha sip. By the way, y'all, I just got this one. It's the ginger lemon. It's so good. It's like, I usually get the GT kombucha. I like the trilogy. That one's my favorite, but this one's making me very, very happy. They were on sale at the grocery store. I was talking about abundance. I was very excited. So we now have a fridge full of these. I'm sure you'll see them on the next couple live streams. Okay, squirrel. Let me get back to focus here. So our other mindset shift, and I want to keep talking about these as shifts, not blocks. I know we use the term blocks in our space a lot. I think I have a whole freebie on blocks, but sometimes I feel like that can almost feel like it's something negative, and no one here is blocked. There's just stuff we want to shift, right? We just want to shift. We want to shift our neural pathways to a different track on our brain. So the other thing I find come up for clients that I imagine come up for many people that I feel, again, I think feels like it's very well intended, and I think can feel almost like you're doing something productive that unintentionally I think can be like a big FU to money and the energy of money and the energy of booking clients, is something that I call creating protection goals. And I think this time of year, this can happen particularly more because we're in New Year's resolutions and post-New Year's resolutions and all the noise online about how much money you should be making by February, whatever day we are today, like otherwise your business year is over. I think there's just a lot of noise that can kind of almost ratchet this up a little bit. And I think this is unintentionally, again, I think it comes from a really well-meant place in the brain, but I think this can do so much harm to your ability to create money, to manifest money, but also to create money and to book clients or to successfully launch whatever that is you're doing in your business. So let me explain what I mean by this, because there's, I think, a couple nuances to this. So protection goals, I kind of mean two different pieces to this. Sometimes a protection goal looks like literally that goal you make for yourself because it feels really safe and cozy, as opposed to a stretch goal. So it's sort of the it's like the easy goal because the stretch goal feels prickly because you feel like maybe you'll get rejected or you won't be able to reach that goal, or you don't want to be disappointed, or you don't want to feel bad about yourself if you don't reach it. So you create, or you don't want to get overwhelmed or burned out creating that goal. And so I find the brain can then want to create, I call them protection goals. And I find protection goals are really sneaky because they usually sound like really big goals. They're just usually goals that for you in particular, you kind of already know are a done deal. You're like, I know I could do this in my sleep. And so it's not really a goal as much as it's more maintaining and sustaining what's like the status quo. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. There are times in business where we want to sustain. We do not always need to be growing. We are having a live stream about this tomorrow. I have so much to fucking say about that, but that's a different conversation. But when we're talking about wanting to create more money, wanting to create more clients, wanting to bring more abundance, wanting to grow and scale your business, and you're in an active place where that is something you genuinely want that feels in alignment, protection goals and picking goals that are essentially, okay, to everyone else, this might seem like a big goal because I'm really good at tricking everyone because I'm a go-getter and I'm a high achiever. But to me, I know I could do this in my sleep. What that does is it really limits you. And the reason it limits you is because usually the reason you're choosing a protection goal is because there's a part of you, again, you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to keep yourself safe. If you're trying to keep yourself safe, what you're also telling yourself is it's not safe to have more because fill in the blank. It is not safe to make more money than this. It is not safe to book more clients than this. It is not safe to scale because I might get rejected. I can't handle disappointment. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. I can't handle the responsibility. Whatever the narrative is there, and that's really the blocker or the thing we want to shift, because as long as there's a part of you that doesn't want more money, more clients, and that feels like something bad is going to happen and that it's not safe, and that is a stronger feeling than the thing you're saying you actually want, that's going to win all day, every day. We talk about this in here a lot. Your brain is not wired for success. Your brain is wired for safety. It is wired for survival. So if there's a part of you that's like, oh, it is not safe to have more, this is what's safe, I need to create this protection goal, it's going to be very challenging if you're also telling yourself you want more to ever reach more, because that's just not going to feel safe. Am I describing this in a way that's making sense? Jen, I don't know if you're still on here, if someone else is on here, let me know if that part's making sense, because I feel like that nuance can feel a little confusing. And what I want to offer here is, this does not mean, I think this is, we talk about staircasing goals and picking, by staircasing goals, I mean, if you have a really, I very much intend to be a millionaire in my business. I know that's a done deal. That is a goal in my business. I don't know when that'll happen, but I have zero doubt, like, that is a goal. And I create staircase goals for myself because my brain feels like, that almost just feels like a little bit like, I don't believe it, but it's just like kind of hard to latch onto. So I like to pick a goal that's kind of like the next rung on the ladder from where I'm at. That's still a stretch, but it's kind of the next rung on the ladder, or the next step on the staircase. So that's what I mean by staircase goals. They're the staircases, they're the steps on the way to your bigger goal. And I find it can be helpful to have a few of those incremental steps to just make it easier to move forward to, you know, where you're focusing. And with those, picking something that is the next step forward with your money goals, with your client goals, with your scaling goals, whatever that looks like for you. And remember, goals don't always have to be money either, but we're talking about money today, right? It might be with your team. It might be with having more fun in your business, or making the same amount of money and working less. But because this live stream is about money, we're talking about money. So I'm all for the staircase goals in honor of that big goal, but that's very different than a protection goal that says, I have that big goal of $1 million. I am so scared that it is not safe that I am picking a goal that's the same staircase I'm already on, or that's a staircase that, like, it's kind of like it's like I'm like gonna touch my toe on the next step and not actually step there because I feel like I need to protect myself. That's the thing we want to be mindful of. Jen says yes, totally does. Thank you very much. I appreciate you so much for chiming in, just so that I want to make sure everyone listening on the replay as well is picking up what I'm putting down. So I think that's something just to be really mindful of, because when we're doing that, again, if your subconscious runs your business and runs your money life, it's like 95 to 99% of your conscious action gets started in your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is designed to keep you safe. If subconsciously or even consciously, it does not feel safe to make more money for some reason, because it could be overwhelming, because you think you'll have more responsibility, because you think people will hate you, because you think you can't handle it, because you think you're not good enough. So, I mean, I think there's so much that can come up there, right? It's going to be very, very hard to consciously create that, because your subconscious will do everything it can to keep you safe and everything it can to keep you congruent with what you believe to be true in your identity. And so that's where, again, we can create these protection goals. So just starting to notice, am I setting protection goals? What am I trying to protect myself from? Because it's not the protection goal that's like the thing to shift as much as we want to look at what am I trying to protect myself from? What does not feel safe about making more money, about booking more clients? That's the place I want to invite you to play with, at looking at how do I create some more safety? Because otherwise, I mean, I could tell you, set a bigger goal, but it's not about that. I don't care if anyone creates the biggest stretch goal in the world, or if it's a couple dollars more. That's not really the point there. It's what's kind of the thing under the thing. The thing under the thing is, if you're setting protection goals, there's a part of you that doesn't feel safe to have more. And that's the place to look at and do the work. That's the place to create safety, because if you can create safety there, right? If your protection goal is kind of that thing that's covering up where you don't feel safe, if you can create safety and do the work there, then yes, you can make the bigger stretch goals, but it's also, whether you have the goal or not, going to be so much easier to allow in, to call in, to notice the opportunities, to go out there and make that next jump of money, or the next client you want to book. Hopefully that part's making sense. The other piece of this, and hey Marie, nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. The other piece with protection goals, and I'm making up the term protection goals. This is not something that's like somewhere out there, y'all. So if you haven't heard this before, you can always rewind back a little bit, because I don't think it's a term people necessarily use. But with protection goals, and what I've noticed with clients as well, that we spend a lot of time talking about, and I think this is kind of part of the same thing that can really seem like we're doing something good and also kind of energetically block. Because I think with the protection goal, right, like it seems like you're setting a goal and you're setting a realistic goal, right? Smart goals say they need to be realistic, or even it can feel like I'm setting, like it is a little bit of that next staircase. That's why we have to see, like, but is it a protection goal or is it a slight stretch? we talked about this at the beginning of the year. We talked about, I used yoga as an example. It's my favorite example for goals, where are you just like sitting in child's pose because you don't feel safe? Or are you in a yoga pose where it's like, I can just stretch a little bit, not to get hurt, but like, can I just stretch and sink into this a little bit? The other piece with this, though, that I find really, really common is this, and I'm like trying to think of how to phrase this in a way that's going to make sense for everyone, is this idea of, with protection goals, part of that playing with this like thing, like, well, it's going to happen later and I'm totally okay with that. And what I mean by that is, I think I talk about playing the long game all the time. I think one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself in business is to play the long game and to really build a business based on the long game. I am the queen of the long game. I have a successful business. I by no means an overnight success. And because I played the long game, it's also, I think, why I know this business will scale to $1 million. Like we're so about the long game in everything we do. And I think playing the long game and being committed to the long game and being committed to the long term in your business can sometimes be a mindfuck where you think, and then things have to take a long time. And then I have to like really be okay with results taking forever. And it can start to do this thing that I think is similar to the protection goals thing, where it's sort of like, well, I have this big goal, but like, it's totally okay if it happens later because I'm playing the long game. It's almost like this, we talked about this in the podcast during the Too Much series, where I talked about being the cool girl or the cool guy. I'll find the episode and link back to it because I talk about y'all reading that monologue. It was one of those things putting on the podcast where I'm like, I cannot believe I'm putting this out on our podcast, but there you go. I will link to it, but we read the monologue from Gone Girl, and it's all about being the cool girl. And it's almost like where you're like in dating, where you're like so cool that nothing bothers you, but then you don't understand why someone doesn't take you seriously in a relationship, because you're just so like, you're trying so hard to be cool that you're not actually being yourself, and you're not actually being the person who has like needs and wants and desires and gets irritated by things sometimes, right? You're just like so cool all the time. I think we can do this in business in so many different ways. And I think protection goals and like the long game can unintentionally be a place. I think, again, it seems like on the surface, you can feel like you're doing like the right thing, and some myriad reasons where this can come from, where it's sort of like, well, I have this big goal, but it's almost like, again, I'm protecting myself. I don't want to be disappointed. Why do people do this in dating? Why do people become the cool person in dating? It's a form of self-protection, right? It's a form of self-preservation. It's a form of not having to be vulnerable or open yourself up to rejection or intimacy or disappointment or having to be the real you, or all the things there, right? It's the same reason we do this in business, where it's sort of like, and it's just so sneaky. This is why I'm saying these are very sneaky and insidious, because we talk about playing the long game, and the long game is such a great thing, and being okay with the long game and results taking a hot second and not like demanding of your business is also really important. We talk about that here all the time. And so I think it's that sneaky thing where it's like, you can take something good, but then almost like use it as a way to self-protect, kind of the way we were talking about with goals, where it's like, well, I'm available for the long game, and now I'm going to use that as a way to protect myself from actually having the scary things happen, where it's sort of like, I'm playing the long game, so I'm so like, it's fine if this just takes forever, it's fine, like, and it's almost like you're playing it so cool, or like pushing that money goal off further and further and further. And what I want to offer you here is just notice if that's coming up. Again, this isn't to make anyone wrong. I think this is really, really common, and I think it's really well intended. And I think it also comes from often a place of self-preservation or self-protection, which is why we're calling them protection goals. But notice if this is happening for you, and just notice, are you playing that game of like, almost like telling yourself it needs to be forever, and that's okay, and that's like doing it right, or that's being good, or that's being nice, or that's the safe thing to do. And what I want to invite you to play with is, it's okay to have a stretch goal and not reach it. It's okay to play the long game and also be available for quick results. And both can be true and both can happen. And I think it's so much more serving and so much more brave, quite honestly, when we sit in that place of, I'm going to pick the stretch goal that I might not reach, that I might have to sit with disappointment, because that's going to allow me to stop doing this because it feels so scary to receive, and allow me to actually stretch, allow me to stretch past my current capacity to make money, to receive money. Just like I think it's really brave to say, I am in this for the long game, I am playing the long game, and I'm also going to own that I would like results right now. I would like to make money right now, and I am so available for that, and I'm gonna show up for the long game. I'm going to show up and make decisions that are for the long game of my business, right? I'm not here to be gone tomorrow. And I'm also going to show up like I'm here to run a business today and make money today, because that's also what keeps me around for the long game. And I think allowing yourself to play in that dichotomy and to stretch in that dichotomy to see what comes up, because sometimes that can feel very edgy and prickly, and to notice what are those edges and what are those prickles. Those are really the places that are such gold mines to see, oh, well, that's my work. This is the mindset work to do, because this is what then allows me to be available to make more money now, to receive more money now, to stretch my capacity to earn, to have, to book more clients, to scale, whatever that is. So really want to invite you to notice those things, notice them, and ask yourself, what are you trying to protect yourself from? I think that can always be so interesting to play with. Why does it not maybe feel safe right now to have as much money coming in? I think we so often, I talk with clients about this, so often we think it's a fear, we feel fear of failure, or we feel not being good enough, or things like that. But I think for so many people as well, there's a fear of success. And I think there's a fear of success, and there can be a fear of disappointment. I think both are very, very prevalent. So just noticing that, because then that becomes the place to create safety. That becomes the place to create comfort. That becomes the work to do, or to see, can I even just be okay with stretching and not reaching that goal? Or stretching, being available now and seeing, okay, it doesn't come now, but it comes way faster than if I had just sort of played the cool girl or cool guy in business for ever, because I'm just trying to do that thing where it's I'm saying the long game means it has to take forever. So I hope that makes sense and gives some insights here on some things you can play with mindset wise, and just some opportunities to notice where so much of business and so much of making money and so much of booking clients and so much of sustaining income and of scaling income does come back to our mindset and energy and what we're telling our brains to focus on. So what we're telling our brains to notice for opportunities, and what we're telling our brains are the things we want that are safe and okay for us to have. Really, again, it's really hard to create something that you're saying is not safe long-term, and that you're allowing yourself then to take action for. Because it's also really hard to take consistent action if we're telling ourselves over and over again the very thing we're going to take action towards is not safe, or is going to harm us, or is going to be bad in some way, shape, or form. So just noticing those opportunities and starting to see, again, these are all normal things, but the more you can notice this, the more you can solve the right problem in your business, the right problem with your money, as opposed to, I think what's so easy is we think we're solving the right problem by worrying, right? If I just worry a little bit more, or if I just give myself a hard time here a little bit more, or if I just, I don't know, when you're worrying, whatever that worrying thing tells you to do, if I just spin out over here and complain a little bit more, then that's going to help me. I'm doing something where you can start to see that's not solving the right problem at all. It's just creating more of the same. It's creating problems that don't exist. Same with, maybe the problem to solve here is that I need to, I don't know what happens with protection goals so often is I just need to keep waiting for the thing I want, or wait to be ready, or wait to take action, or wait to create the program, or wait to sell. And instead they're seeing the right problem probably to solve is I need to create more safety to take action now, and safety to receive money now. And I'm generalizing, obviously, for everyone here as you're listening to this. There might be a different kind of thing under the thing for you, but the invitation is to start to see, can I solve the right problem when it comes to my money and elsewhere in my business? And I hope this is helpful for you. All right, as a recap, I'll give you those 2 mindset shifts and then all of our free stuff we've got going on this month to close out. So as a recap, the 2 mindset shifts you can play with to bring in more clients and cash. Mindset shift number 1, notice where you're worrying and creating a future by default that you do not want of more of what you're worrying, creating problems that don't exist yet, but you're going to manifest in the future. See if you can see, why does it feel so good to worry? And what do you want to focus on instead? What's a better problem you can tell your brain to create and focus on? And the other one there is looking at, are you creating protection goals? Or with protection goals, are you kind of playing that game, that sneaky long game where you're telling yourself, it's okay, it's just going to happen later. It's just going to happen later because that feels like it's creating safety for you. And then if you're watching the replay, let me know if you have any ahas around this. And then a reminder, we have our free masterclass for February, Words That Sell, at the end of the month. I think it's on the 22nd, I believe. It's the last Tuesday of the month. I will drop a link here for that, but it should be kimargetsinger.com/words-that-sell. But I'll drop it here just in case I have the hyperlink wrong. And we're gonna be talking about content copy, particularly the words you're using. There's a really fun bonus with some power booster words you can use for your copy. And of course, we'll be talking some mindset as well. We're gonna be workshopping some copy stuff, which is one of my favorite things to help clients with and to talk about. And then we still have some scholarship sessions. Well, I don't know exactly when I'm gonna shut those off. It'll depend more on how it's floating with my client. I gotta make sure I pay attention to them, obviously, but we have some scholarship sessions. If you've never received a free session from me before, the Pete Argetsinger scholarship sessions in honor of my dad, I will drop a link for that here as well. And then anyone who's like, I don't wanna wait for any of that, Kim, I just want your support. I need support with my mindset around money, around business, and I need support with my strategy around writing copy, around selling, around marketing. I want to make more money now. I don't want to wait. I don't want to have those protection goals. I want to get out of my own way, and I want the mindset piece of it. So I'm solving the right problem, but I also want the strategy side of things because I got to take action on that. And I know that's important as well. That is what I support clients with. I can drop a consultation link for that as well. And we can talk about the next available spot I have opening up. All right, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be back next week. We have a really near and dear topic to my heart that I cannot wait to share with you. And we'll also be giving away a free session for that one because I would love to encourage people to join and watch on that. So keep your eyes out. I will wait to tell you the topic till we put out the blurb for that, but I'll see y'all next week. Bye.